It's a little after 7 a.m. and I've struck out on my own because I wanted to sort of explain to you why we're staying in Chichester. It's not, it's not one of the places that's generally in the conversation when you talk about taking a holiday in England. Also, why are we staying at, the travel lodge? We're staying at the travel lodge because I do have family here, but there's not any space for us to stay. But we're in Chichester because, well, I do have family here. My whole life we've been coming to Chichester. It's where my English family lived, my mom's side of the family. My grandparents lived here, many aunts and uncles and cousins, and I've been coming here my entire life. I don't even know how many times. Dozens. When I was much smaller. And then there was a big lull over a decade, I think, and then Kathleen and I came here in 2011, and then haven't been back until now. And so, yeah, it's mostly nostalgia, but I do still have family here, and there's lots of fun stuff to do. And so, join me, please, this morning while I introduce you to why Chichester is important to me, even if it doesn't seem very interesting to you. It's a fairly generic looking clothing store now, but for years, decades even, this building was a McDonald's, and I always thought it was really cool that it was the fanciest looking McDonald's I'd ever seen. This small, to my mind, improbably narrow street near the center of town is called Little London, and my family lived in one of these row houses across the street. I'm not going to tell you which one because I don't know who lives there now. But this was always where we would come to stay when we visited Chichester. Under the right conditions, my grandfather could open a bottle of champagne in the backyard and have the cork clear the entire house and land in the street. It's around the corner from what was the Shipham's Fish Paste Factory. I love Shipham's Fish Paste on a bit of crusty bread. It's delicious. And across the street from what was a museum and is now also apartments. Both those buildings are now fancy apartments, which is fine. You don't need to live that close to a fish paste factory. The museum was very sad, but it was a thing to do when you were a kid, so I went there a lot. Learned a lot about the Romans in Britain. Despite its slim width, Little London used to be, and still is to an extent, a trucking route or a lorry route. And I fondly remember sitting in the living room and the incredibly tall, large trucks being so close to the house that when they would drive by, they would completely blot out the sun. So the living room would be plunged into shadow in the middle of the day. As you can see from the bollards, it's not a through road. And so it was pretty safe for a kid of my age to walk down to the end of the road and across the street and into Priory Park, where we are now. Priory Park is a public space and cricket ground, the grass for which they're currently preparing. And it's so named because there's a priory, or friary. The Guildhall building was a friary, so it's called Priory Park. The giant rolling fences are to block errant cricket balls. They were just doing a match in here yesterday. It looked like a sort of a pickup junior league. I don't know what happens here in the summer. They were also screening first-run movies on an inflatable screen over there as part of the Chichester film thing, but it was bring your own chair, and we didn't have chairs. Now, this won't be news to anybody who knows this fun fact, but any city in England with Chester, or Ester as its town suffix, used to be a Roman camp. And Chichester is no different. It was founded in 30, I think, as a Roman camp. Obviously, it had been occupied by local people before that, but, the Romans showed up and took over Britain. And then in around the year 300, they built defensive walls around the entire city. And then 100 years later they left, and the Saxons and then the Normans took over, and then 1,000 years after they were first built, in 1378, the walls were repaired. And then in 1984, they were repaired again. And so now we have the Walls Walk, which goes around a little more than 3/4 of the old Roman city. It's the scale of time that impresses me, right? Like these walls, the walls I'm walking on now, that I can look down over the houses that lay just outside the original Roman city, were built 1,700 years ago and were renovated and repaired almost 700 years ago. It's a baffling time scale for someone from Canada. You could go to pubs that are older than my country. You can go to a pub in New York that's older than my country. Far in the distance, you can see Chichester Cathedral, which was built in 1076, which meant that the Chichester could be a town. It took 32 years to build, but it's been standing pretty well since then. The spire did collapse at one point, but they rebuilt it. And this big mound here, this large berm that I used to clamber all over as a child, is the remnants of a Norman fort, a motte and bailey. It basically is just a big lump with a tower at the top and like a moat around for defense. And not just defense, but sort of to be like we're here, we the Normans, we're here. This is us indicating that we've claimed this particular area. Notes for when they're playing cricket in the park. Be aware of flying balls. Vacate the outfield ahead of play. Don't sit too close to the boundary. Do not enter the outfield whilst cricket is playing. When sitting in the boundary, face the pitch. Keep an eye on the flight of the cricket ball and enjoy the cricket. And if you get brained by a cricket ball, it's your own damn fault. Now, at the edge of the park, the walls do not perfectly surround the city because, it's a modern city and people got to get places. So that's Priory Park back there. And you sort of descend the Walls Walk and then go out into the street. And then you have to cross a main road up ahead and then you go back up. See, because Chichester used to be a Roman camp, it was laid out in the same floor plan as all the other Roman camps. The whole purpose, the idea being that if you were a garrison of legionnaires arriving in the middle of the night in pitch black, you could still find your way around the town. So it's 4 main roads, north, south, east, west. They meet in the middle, and then it's surrounded by walls. And after they left, the Saxons or the Normans, I can't actually remember which one, built gates in the walls at the north, south, east, west. They shuttered them in Chichester during the bubonic plague. They were like, no Black Death for us, please. And then eventually the gates were completely demolished to allow, actual traffic in and out of the city. So the gates themselves haven't survived, but there are, ruinous remnants of them here and there. And the walls themselves did, because, boy, what a pain to excavate these things. 1,700 years, they could have taken the walls down if they wanted to. They just didn't need to. They weren't necessarily in the way. They'd already been building around them. They were just these big things that were always in the city. The sort of remnants of some artillery towers that were built around the circumference of the walls. The towers themselves don't exist, but there are some remnants just in people's gardens. You see, these people just have an enormous bolus of stone in their back parking lot and they can't do anything about it. It's probably 15 foot tall. It's absolutely enormous. As you orbit the entire walls, the spire of Chichester Cathedral is always visible in the center. Descending the walls again now, just coming up to Westgate, where the West Gate was. So named. This is a section again where you cross the street, pass through the bishop's gardens of the cathedral, and then you go back up the walls again. The actual route to circumnavigate the walls is not actually tremendously well signposted, and I only know it because I've done it so many times over so many years. Parts of it have the little designation set into the sidewalk of the Walls Walk, but this section, if you don't know that you're supposed to cross the street and pass the roundabout and duck into this little side passage into the Bishop's Palace Gardens and then go up on this grassy berm, you wouldn't know. In the southwest quadrant of the walls does stand the remains of one of the artillery towers. See, we started here in the park, did that whole section, then that whole section, and now we're here, and we have to get down again and go across the street. And it says there's another little section there, and it indicates there's a artillery tower there, so I guess let's check that out. I'll be honest with you, the southeast quarter of the walls was always kind of annoying to get to, so, I mean, as a kid we sort of didn't really. But it's not quite 8 a.m., so let's give it a shot. Don't have to be at breakfast till 9. Side goal for this morning is to find somewhere that makes proper coffee. And by proper coffee, I don't mean surge levels of things. I'm not looking for something like Nomad or Slow Move. I'm looking for something that uses an espresso machine. And not a machine you put a cup under and press a button that says latte. Ooh, that did brush the very top of my hair just there. Cutting it close. We're actually quite close to the cathedral now, because it is in this quadrant. It's just there. Now, it's been actually probably decades for me since I've found or walked this particular section of the walls, so I guess it's time for an adventure and you're coming with me. I'm just sort of going where I imagine they would have to be. Somewhere near the Palance, I suppose. The building you see behind me now is Pallant House, which is an art gallery that my granny was in some way involved in. I honestly don't recall offhand. I just know that I used to really enjoy Pallant House because of the 2 statues of Dodo out front of it. Big fan of large extinct flightless birds. I found a sign that suggests the Walls Walk is this way through a parking lot for a chartered accountancy, so let's go. Absolute beast of a tree got cut down. Yeah, this section we never really did because it's sort of a bear to get to and kind of out of the way, whereas the other 3 lead neatly very into one another. So you can start over by East Street, a little section I didn't show you, then go around the park, past North Gate, past West Gate, through the gardens and end up at the cathedral, which is a lovely walk. Whereas this section, sort of out of the way. But there is a tower. You can very easily see the several different eras of construction and the stratified layers of that tower. Also, there's a door on it with a combination lock and no other point of access, so I wonder what's inside. Science may never know. And that was it. That was the entire section of that. That was the entire Walls Walk for that quadrant. So yeah. Yeah, I have, very Gandalf, I have no memory of this place, and that's probably why, because it's not much going on, really. Well, back to the cardinal streets now. None of the other quadrants have a sign like this. Probably they just have to, because it's really out of the way otherwise. Oh, here's the council chambers. I remember going to the council chambers because my gran was very invested in local politics, but let me tell you, nothing more thrilling for a 10-year-old than sitting through a council session. Look, it's not going to win Barista Championship awards or anything, but it's a actual latte made from an espresso machine, and I'm very happy. I only say that because there's a place that I passed on the walk that apparently has won some awards and is supposed to be open today at 7:30 and isn't. As a kid, another thing I loved about Chichester was the network of very narrow pedestrian back alleys called Twittons. partly because it's a fun name, partly because it's just, you know, why wouldn't a kid love a little network of tiny, narrow public back alleys? It's very hot, but the latte is really hitting the spot. I tell you what, delight as a child being entrusted with £2 to go across to Good News, the news agents, to get the morning papers. Did I tell you I saw a helicopter in Prairie Park once? I did. Because behind the row houses I mentioned earlier is a hospice, and it was at the time under the purview of the Prince of Wales, and he was visiting, and then he left by helicopter from the park. Got footage of it somewhere. This is the sort of thing I love about England, that you have a Saxon church built in 1050, the oldest occupied building in the entire town, in between a poke bowl place and a cell phone store. The cathedral itself, of course, is also amazing. You can walk around the main part of the cathedral and all the cloisters, and fondly remember going to the Bishop Bell Tea Room and having a flapjack, which is not a confection that we get in Canada. We would think that a flapjack is a pancake, but no, this is a very specific thing with sort of like a crunchy oats and honey bar, sort of like a granola bar actually, just like, I don't know, different and better in some way that I can't adequately describe. Apparently the Bishop Bell closed and has been reopened as the Cloisters Cafe, a name change that has been a matter of some contention according to what brief internet research I was able to do, but maybe we'll pop by there later.
I'm missing the World Bog Snorkeling Championships.
Oh yes, interesting fact I failed to note on my tour of the walls earlier is that this here, the West Gate roundabout, where the West Gate used to be, was formerly a residential home and the home of Eric Gill, designer of the font Gill Sans. Now it's a roundabout. This is your fun font fact. Graham's facts about fonts. Oh hell, I should have workshopped this. There used to be a plaque to that effect, but apparently they removed it because it was found that Mr. Gill was not, in his day, kind to his family. But I didn't pay for the font, it was free on my computer. So... Did you know that post boxes bore the regnal name of the monarch who was on the throne at the time the post box was installed? I recently discovered that. That one back there was installed during the reign of George VI.
That was pre-Elizabeth II.
Yeah.
Because that was her dad, right?
I'm the wrong person to ask. I feel like a majority of the post boxes you're going to find around England are Elizabeth, Regina, obviously. George Rex, there's still some of those around. The rare drop, for those interested in collecting all the post boxes, is the ER7. Because, of course, he was only on the throne for a very brief period before his abdication. But some post boxes bearing his regnal name and number do exist.
I like the fact that, unlike in, Canada, they, replace all the post boxes fairly often and stuff. And I think I'd just leave a 60... What, that post box has to be, how many years did she spend on the throne? 60? Why don't 70? I not remember this?
70.
70? Was it? No, yeah, she lived to be so old. So that post box is 80 years old. There's no 80-year-old post boxes in Canada. If they were that old, they would have replaced them with something modern and less charming. Let things get old.
Build things well enough that they can get old. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're heading now to Fishbourne Roman Palace, which is where at a very young age I started my interest in the Romans and their history in Britain. I don't talk about it a lot because interest in the Roman Empire, same with general military history and red hats, are things that have been co-opted by absolutely detestable people who make it a big part of their personal identity. And so when you tell someone, oh yes, I'm very interested in the history of, the Roman legion and stuff, they make, justifiable assumptions about you. But no, that ain't me. I just think sort of, the history of particularly the Romans in Britain, this period of time where the Roman Empire vastly overextended up into the UK, is very interesting. Train. And when I was here as a kid at Fishbourne Roman Palace, there was the Ermine Street Guard, a group that still exists. Sadly won't be visiting Fishbourne until much later in this month, but they're basically, reenactors. And so they were all there in costume with siege weaponry and everything, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. For an 8-year-old, I was like, oh, I'm on board. Let's learn more about these Romans. So what happened here at Fishbourne, and it's small wonder it doesn't happen more often in the UK, is that they were building a housing development and they were doing their digging, and then they went, whoops, what's under the ground here? An entire Roman villa? In England? Yes. So now it's a historic site and museum. Nearly 2,000 years ago, the Romans had underfloor heating, and if I wanted to get some now, it would be so expensive. What we learned from the introductory video, narrated by the way by Tony Robinson, which was a lovely surprise, was that this was, it was one of the biggest seats of Roman power in England, and the Caesar or Trajan, whomever, sent someone up here to basically take over from the local king, and found this enormous palace in southern Britain, and basically be the arm of Rome here in Britain, as he did for apparently a very long reign. And then the palace eventually, after a couple hundred years, suffered an enormous fire in 2 of its wings and never sort of really recovered. And then other wings were demolished, and the stone was, it was just ruins, and the stone was pilfered and taken away, and some of the stone may have even been used to build the walls back in Chichester. Or Nova Regnum. It has Chichester in those days had a very fancy long Roman name. And then there were pagan burials here, one of which is still, they had to dig through the ground, the foundations of the palace to bury them, and they're still just there. There's just a skeleton. All the pagans were buried on like a north-south line, which is sort of one of the reasons that they know. And then it was just farmland and left for hundreds of years. And then in the 1960s, the water company was like, well, I've got to build a trench through here, and used a giant excavator and dug through and went, wait, what's this? And then just like amateur enthusiast archaeologists got in here and started excavating it, and managed to convince a wealthy amateur archaeologist to buy the site and build this containing building. And now we have the biggest example of some of the finest mosaics in the whole country. So, very impressive. There's some amazingly complete history here. It's I don't know, I've always enjoyed it. I love that even the Romans remodeled. They had the one mosaic that was black and white and geometric shapes, and then colored mosaics came into fashion, and they were like, we simply must remodel the fourth antechamber, and you can see that there's just mosaic lay down on top of another mosaic because it was no longer fashionable. People haven't changed. I do enjoy that they've lovingly preserved the path of the trench that the excavator dug that uncovered this whole thing. Because, I mean, it's an important part of the history of Fishbourne Roman Palace. Without it, this wouldn't have been found, right? So, also, you can't really do much about it.
Box hedging looks very nice, but it's hard work for me. I have to cut it twice a year. Once in the early summer and then again in the autumn. I clip it with shears like the ones on the left of my bench. It seems to take forever. The grass cutting is a never-ending job too. We mow it with scythes when it gets too long, but we often let the geese feed on it, and that keeps it short and fertilized at the same time. My stomach tells me it's time to eat. Bread and fruit to wash down with a cup of red wine, and then back to work. Oh, I'd be a gardener.
This dude's just complaining. He's just rattling off about how bummed he is being a gardener.
Oh no, not more interruptions.
Absolutely enormous bumblebees. Not pictured because I ate it, was a Marks & Spencer's club sandwich, which was honestly real good. Penelope's gone for the ham and cheese. These little triangle package sandwiches are another staple of childhood trips to England for me. Turns out, still good. Also, tomatoes. These are delicious. What are these called again? They were called sugar drop tomatoes?
Sugar drop cherry tomatoes.
They're very sweet.
We got sandwiches, tomatoes, and dessert for 3 people. When we're not particularly, we decided to go a little extravagant and get cookies as well, right? And it was like £16, which, I mean, is not no money, right? But considerably cheaper than going in and getting lunch, right?
They have free public Wi-Fi here, but it's password protected. But Kathleen and I both independently each guessed the password because it's bad infosec. It's Fishbourne. Shocking nobody.
Well,
So I bought the Roman ruler because we have one of these actually that I bought nearly 30 years ago. This one's slightly been improved by the design as it has more useful gradations on the back. But yeah, turns out we're forever looking for rulers around the house. So now we have 2 of them. And we know they last because, again, I've had mine for nearly 30 years that I bought when I was here to see the Ermine Street Guard. So that's fun. It was lovely coming back to Fishbourne for the first time in 12 years and getting to show it to Penelope, who had fun searching for mosaics on their mosaic bingo sheet. So yeah, apparently that's just the tech now, is that these places have like I Spy lists for kids, and let me tell you, they work. They work great. Now we're off to Chichester Canal. Everybody look out. St. Bartholomew's close, and he's narrowing the gap. Run! Earlier this morning, a pigeon alighted on the windowsill just outside and started cooing very loudly, and I shooed it away because it was loud and the other 2 were still asleep. But as we were arriving back just now, I was looking and thinking to myself, I guess there's nothing really stopping a pigeon from just coming into the room, now that I think about it. And no sooner had I uttered those words than I realized that has happened while we were out. As you can see, it's just open to the outside, and the pigeon left us a small green-brown present on Penelope's bed. So, awful. Doesn't seem to have done anything else in here, though. I'm amazed there's not, like, chicken wire or something to prevent this from happening. Alright, I'll go clean that up, I guess. So we decided for our afternoon in Chichester that we would return to something Kathleen and I did a few years ago, well 12 years ago, which is to rent a rowboat and go for a row down Chichester Canal. We sort of misjudged the timing. Rowboat's got to be back by 5 and it's 4 o'clock now, so actually that reminds me. Brief moment while I pull my phone out. 30-minute timer. Set a 30-minute timer. Lovely. So we're going to get as far as we can in 30 minutes, and then when that goes off,
We have to
we have to haul back here to the cafe. We did pitch Penelope on the idea of simply walking along the canal, but once we realized that rowing was even an option, it was hard to convince her of anything else. At the cafe where you rent the boats, Kathleen noticed some traditionally hot ginger beer, and so has purchased some for her and myself. Penelope has apple juice, and it is, I mean, it's spicy. It's a spicy ginger beer. Not sponsored, it's delicious. Now, it's time to engage in the only maneuver I must do today, which is turning around, because we're a few minutes ahead of when we desperately have to head back, and I feel like we're going to get a slight tailwind, but, you know, we have to have the boat back by 5, it's 4:25, we don't want to be late, there's no like logical end point, we can't go as far as Huntston, and oh my goodness, ducklings are coming for us. Hello? Why are you coming over here? Hello, little babies.
Oh no.
His mother's like, don't get too close, kids. Hello? Oh my goodness, they're so close.
Babies.
Why are you coming so close? Why are you coming to say hello? That was absolutely unexpected. They were making a beeline for us.
They
All right,
still
well,
are.
now I
Dad,
have
they
to
still
go.
are.
No, you can't
Oh,
go
no.
forward yet. They're right in front of you.
Okay, well, they're just orbiting the entire boat. All right, tell me when it's safe for me to go. I'm going to sort of
Yeah, it's safe.
push slightly in that direction.
Bye, ducklings.
Now well underway on the return trip. Seeing those ducks was amazing. There's a different variety of duck that I don't know what it is, but the ducklings for that just look like a little brown. They look like a soot sprite with a beak coming out of it, and those are adorable. And along the Chichester Canal of all places, we were recognized by a viewer who had seen that I was in Chichester because of Instagram, Graham_LRR, and had recommended that we go and see the castle at Arundel, which Kathleen and I have done on a previous trip and was wonderful. And we would do again if we were spending longer in Chichester. Really what we've realized is that we just need to spend longer in the south of England on a future trip, because it has been 12 years and we don't want it to be 12 years before we come back. I got slightly distracted doing my piece to camera and got a little close to the far bank, but we're back on track. We're just approaching, I don't know if it's still operational. I would expect not, but it's a bridge that swings out across the canal for pedestrians and
Watch out.
presumably horse and cart to take to cross the canal. But I don't think it. Oh, and there's an amazing butterfly sculpture. Let's not get quite so close to these blackberries, eh? Well, that's unfortunate too. There is quite a side wind that I'm going to blame for most of this.
Oh, it's picked up the other way. Yes, blow us back.
Good. Oh, yes, there we go. Yes. See, the wind giveth and the wind taketh away. Excellent. I did absolutely obliterate the remainder of my can of ginger beer with the oar there. Drama on the high seas in Chichester Canal.
Swans.
And swans.
Oh no.
Well, hopefully the swans aren't too territorial.
I've never known swans to be ill-tempered.
No, I've never known swans to be a problem.
But there's tons of them and they're blocking the entire ridge.
But we're going right for them.
Oh, there's a swan literally coming right behind you.
I'm just gonna... It made a noise.
Penelope thinks the prospect of being attacked by swans is extremely funny.
They're following us.
Are they following us?
No, okay, they've stopped.
Okay.
I think there was a little bit of a and stay out posturing. We are now returning to the canal basin, where we are obliged to return the rowboat in 15 minutes, so we're early.
Our hero!
I wonder how my shoulders are going to feel later. We have not had enough fill of the canal, so now we're walking along it. And I should be able to just fit under this bridge. Or not.
Oh, you've got to like an inch.
So we walked all the way down the canal to nearby Hunston, and we found a different route on a public footpath back to Chichester. And like all the best public footpaths, it's just kind of through a field. Now, presumably, that device is to prevent livestock from getting out of this field. I don't want this to sound too much like gatekeeping, but you haven't really gone for a walk in England unless you had to cut through a field with actual livestock in it. Which, thus far, we also haven't done. But the point is, I have done in the past, and it's quite an experience. The cows, for their part, don't really care about you. Are you feeding them? No. And you're not relevant.
Behold! The only thing I wanted to do on my vacation, which is to go from one place to another by having to cross through a field. I have unironically several times pitched the idea of Foot Quest, where it's like Road Quest, but we just walk places. If anybody would like to fund that, let me know. I could do 3 weeks across Wales, Scotland, any number of places. I'll film it exhaustively, bring a tripod, set it up, have my bag sent ahead by car to the next place I'll be staying overnight. Lovely.
The spire of Chichester Cathedral really does dominate the horizon. It's impressive. Oh, it's a great landmark. I know we're going the right way. I mean, I'm glad they're in the next field over, but we are awfully close to some horses. What I want to find is one of the old styles. Okay, that wasn't actually meant to be a pun. I want to find an older version of the style that has like the wooden bench that you step up and over. As cool as those metal ones are. I see something wooden up ahead, but I don't think that's what this is. Blackberry. Ooh, I think we're okay. Okay. Got away with it. What in the hiding from the Nazgul is that path up ahead? We did it! We are now back at a very badly maintained overpass. Probably because it's not used very often. I mean, there's no other sidewalk here. So the only people who would use this overpass are the people going to that public footpath. So, I guess from an infrastructure level, kind of ridiculous, but okay. The rest of the overpass is actually maintained, though I don't know how many people are walking across the A27 Chichester bypass. It's very busy. That's where we were. Way over there. Leaving the delightful cacophony of the A27 behind us, we are now heading back towards Chichester via a different public footpath between a bunch of buildings. As we're just passing Market Street, one thing I didn't get to show you in sort of my nostalgia tour of town was, well, the market, because it only happens on Wednesdays and Saturdays. It's basically like a swap and shop, like you've seen us go to in Victoria, but by people that have been doing this for a very, very long time. As in, like, it's the family thing. There's a butcher cart that comes around that's, you know, it's very, like, loud, boisterous, public. You know, he's showing off the meat, he's demonstrating the quality, he's, you know, and then he's like on this elevated thing and has a slide that the meat goes down. I'm sure it's very, I wonder what happened to them in COVID. I hope they survived. Because it does sort of like, you know, it's very much like, here you go, look at this chicken, look at this lovely chicken, you want this, here you go, whoop, and then like fire it down the chute into the bag at the bottom for the people waiting, and it's all very like, you know, it's almost like an auction. He's like, how much you give me for these steaks, you know, what do you want?
If you know your prices on chickens, you will buy these, right? And they should be a fiver, which is cheap, on there, look. These are huge ones. If I do you these, look, 2 of these for £8. Who wants a deal? 2 massive chickens, £8, yeah. You know that's cheap. There's one. These are the biggest ones.
£6 bob? No, anyone? £5 bob? £5 bob. You want £5 bob? Here you go. Boom, down the same meat chute that the chicken just went down. I guess if you're going to cook it that day for your dinner, then you know, it's probably fine. It's probably fine. Anyway, I do love the market, which, you know, unfortunately we were not here during days when it was happening, but it's an experience. I need to know why it's TK Maxx in the UK. I need to know which came first, because in North America we have TJ Maxx, but it's exactly the same branding otherwise. I need to know which came first and why it's different. This is bizarre.